and welcome to the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast, where we are inspiring women in menopause to unleash their inner queen, write their own story, and define their own menopause journey. I am your host, the Menopause Queen, Lisa R. Triggs, certified menopause coach, certified neuroscience coach, motivational speaker, and best-selling author of The Menopause Mindshift, How I Unleashed My Inner Queen, and you can too. This is a space for real, honest conversations about menopause. Because menopause isn't just about hormones. It's neurological, it's emotional, and it's deeply personal. After 20 years of navigating menopause, I've learned that what most women are missing isn't more information, it's a different way of seeing themselves. And in this podcast, we talk about what's really happening in your body, your brain, and the tools that support you in feeling better. You'll hear from inspiring guests, as well as the insights and perspective shifts that changed everything for me. Because self-love in menopause isn't a luxury, it's the foundation. So if you are ready to think differently about menopause, reconnect with yourself, and define your own journey, you are in the right place.
What if the symptoms you are experiencing aren't the problem, but the message? What if your body is not breaking down, but asking you to finally pay attention? Because for so many women, there comes a moment when everything shifts: your health, your identity, even your life. And sometimes it takes being pushed to that moment to finally listen. Hello and welcome to the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast, where we are helping women in menopause unleash their inner queen, define their own journey, write their own story. I'm your host, the Menopause Queen, Lisa R. Triggs, best-selling author and motivational speaker. This is not just about symptoms. This is about understanding your body, advocating for yourself, and realizing that there is never a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to your health. Today, I'm joined by Cindy Dupuie. Cindy is based in Los Angeles and has a background in dietetics. But her journey into functional medicine wasn't planned. It came from a deeply personal place. After being thrown into early menopause at age 43, navigating divorce, and dealing with severe digestive issues, Cindy was forced to find answers for herself when no one else could give them to her. And what came out of that journey is powerful. Over the past 20 years, Cindy has helped countless women heal, understand their bodies, and become their own advocates. She is a guide, a teacher, and a woman who truly walks the path she speaks about. Her work is rooted in one core truth: you cannot navigate this journey alone, and you aren't meant to. Today, we are going to talk about what it really means to support your body through change and how to ask for what you need, how to take your power back when it comes to your health. Cindy, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Self-Love Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. So tell me, so where do you want to begin to tell us about who you are and what you do?
Well, probably start from the very beginning. So we're kind of a good jumping point, I think, is going back to when I was going through my divorce. I threw myself into menopause at the ripe old age of 43. So that's on the younger end of it. And it happened just like that. And it happened for a variety of reasons. One is it was a very stressful time, as you can imagine. I lost too much weight, and, cholesterol and fat is a backbone of your hormones. So my body said, we're done. And even when I had kind of gotten past that, so about age 45, my body says, we're not going to turn it back on. So seeing enough, it was timing wise right around Women's Health Initiative study when that came out, which was 2003. So this was a while back, over 20 years ago. I'm on the way on the other side of menopause. I'm 68 now, I'll tell you that. And
Mhm.
so I've been living in the pause world for a while. And I
Mm.
did find functional medicine because for a couple of reasons. One is, yes, my degree is in dietetics, food administration. I've always been fascinated by the human body and I want to get back into the human body. When I got my degree, I didn't do anything with it. All right. I had a family, had kids, was working for my then husband. He had a used car business. So definitely had, gone a totally different direction and wanted to get back into what I really loved. And so I actually became a yoga instructor during that time. And I happened to find Dr. Mark Hyman, who was very instrumental in getting the Institute of Functional Medicine up and going. He was I don't know if he was a founder, but he was very instrumental in that. And I happened to go to a lecture and the one of the women held up his book, The Ultra Metabolism. I went, huh. So I bought it and I started to read it and I went, okay, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And then I started to counsel clients back from yoga and nutrition, weight loss and things like that. So I was applying the things I learned in the past. And there was something that I was looking up and I just happened to stumble across the Institute of Functional Medicine. I didn't know about it before then. They were having a week long, very intensive training in Pasadena, which is right around the corner from me. And I said, I got to go. So I went and I thought I just it makes so much sense to me. And I found my tribe. And so I continued taking classes from the Institute of Functional Medicine. And for people who don't know what functional medicine is, I think it's important to make a distinction here. There's integrated medicine, which can overlap a little bit. I think the biggest premise or the biggest difference between maybe integrative and functional medicine at its finest, is that we look at the root cause of things. All right. So we have to connect. One of my favorite things to do is to be a detective, right? I love it. No, I'm getting, lab work and finding out what's happening with a person right now. And the lab work is not just what's in front of me, right? It's connecting all the dots within the lab work, looking at the lab history, because everyone has a different normal, right? We need to know what is going on with this person. I look at their trauma. I look at their family history. I even look at, something's really changed from what last year to this year. It's like, okay, let's go through the steps here. Let's figure out, talk to me. So connecting
Mhm.
the dots is one of the most fun things I get to do. And, you mentioned that I had a very compromised digestive system, and I did. And I did go to an integrative doctor for that. And she actually did do what we determined as a functional test through a very good lab. But the problem, and I've run into this, I'm sure all of us run into it, maybe didn't know we ran into it, is that doctors have their own bias of what they're looking for and what they're trained in and how much time they have to do. So she missed something huge that was going on.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
happen at this training be sitting next to a Canadian naturopathic doctor. And, when you go to something like this, you kind of sit next to the same person every day. You kind of, you establish your spot, you go back. She was an absolute delight. And when we were in the section of the digestive system, kind of told her what's going on and told her I'd had the test done. She goes, well, do you have it? Well, I had it at home. So I brought it the next day and she looked at it and she was able to help me. It was really very serendipitous.
Wow.
Taking that and, digestive system is a huge part of a lot of things that could be going wrong that, are not obvious
Absolutely.
that way.
Gut brain
So
connection, the whole thing, right?
brain connection, skin connection, hormonal connection, because
Yes.
our digestive system is part of eliminating hormones and processing hormones. So it's very broad. Yeah. Our availability of nutrients is dependent upon, our stomach acid, our bile production, our use of bile, enzymes, all that kind of stuff. Hormones too. And this is what people don't realize. But
Mhm.
I moved from helping both men and women in the functional medicine space um, to perimenopause and menopause about 7 years ago, actually. I mean, I've been in the menopause space personally for 25
Mhm.
years, right? And
It's been, yeah, going on 20 years for me.
okay.
So, yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So what was happening is some of my patients who were getting a little bit older, right? They're in that space. They weren't originally when they came to see me. And I know how they eat. I know what their labs look like. I know their lifestyle. I know all of that. And we're still losing some ground. And I'm going, all right, I'm missing a piece here. So that was one thing. And, when I would do an intake, I would ask my clients, okay, so, has your libido dropped? I was kind of looking at that without having the education and kind of stopping there. They said, well, my libido, it really doesn't matter because either I'm not with a partner or my partner isn't interested. And I would just kind of leave it. And then I realized there's a lot more pieces to this. And that in conjunction with watching my own contemporaries and watching what's happening to them in their health and their ability to move really stopped me in my tracks.
I'll be honest with that with my. She said, I don't like to put people on it because the longer you're on it, the harder it is to come off. We become reliant on it. That got me thinking, just me personally. So after 2 years, I weaned off because she scared me with that. And not the kind of person who wanted to be on medication for the rest of my life, potentially, if I got reliant on it. But again, that's just me. And I know many other people are like, I don't care. I could have to be on this other medication for the rest of my life because I have some other condition. So for some people who maybe have other conditions that they're used to that, having to take like diabetes, whatever, you have to take insulin. You know what I mean? For them to wrap their head around that would, I think, be much more easier for someone who's not. I couldn't wrap my head around potentially being on something for indefinitely, so to speak.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because I just did a masterclass yesterday. And one of the things that I think is super important for any woman to make a decision that's right for her, whether or not to do hormones or not do hormones, there's a lot of different layers. One of the first layers I think a woman needs to understand is the role that estrogen and progesterone plays in our body. So I think the only role that I think most of us know about until we really go deeper is the role that we were taught when we were younger, right? Is that these hormones are for us as far as having periods and making babies, okay, to procreate. That's really all we know these things in terms of, right? But nothing in our body is siloed. Ever, ever, ever.
Right. It's all connected. You're right.
It's all connected. While and you'll hear it come through, I am a proponent of HRT, but having said that, and I'm going to talk about the dependency on it, but at the same time, so they're making a lot more money on all the other drugs that they are going to have women be taking or doctors are prescribing to their women patients, because without these hormones, often these other symptoms and other diseases or conditions will come up.
Issues come up. Yeah.
Yeah,
depression,
they do.
Right? They treat the depression and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So estrogen plays a role in serotonin receptor sites. So when it goes away, it depends on the woman. She may really have a difficult time with that. And so she may need to go on an antidepressant if she chooses not to go on HRT. All right. I mean, the HRT is more natural. It's what our bodies have been used to. And as far as a withdrawal, or as far as our bodies being dependent on it, when you take the estrogen away, all of the things that would be happening if you don't have the estrogen in your body, are going to come back, and a lot of people don't realize, and osteoporosis is a big one. Okay. And I see a lot of my clients come in, and unfortunately they don't get their DEXA scan until they're 65, which is 15 years too late. For a lot of women. I mean, we lose about 20% of our bone within the first 10 years of menopause. So 20 to 30%. And what a lot of women don't realize is that only one in 3 women will die within the first year of breaking a hip. And it's not because necessarily the surgery, it's what happens after the surgery. So we lose mobility. We often will be more susceptible to pneumonia. The recovery, just a woman never recovers again. UTIs, She can become very infected. Lots of times UTIs in older women are undetected, and it can hit her brain, it can hit her kidneys. So there's a lot of deaths. People don't realize that from osteoporosis. So if we have estrogen on board, we're going to slow that down. Of course, we still need to eat adequate protein. Of course, we still need to make sure we sleep when we reduce our stress. Of course, we still need to be lifting up some weights and doing maybe heel drops and being active. We need all those things in place. But I have seen time and time again that if there are not hormones on board, and especially if there's a family risk to it, we can be doing all those things and we're still moving into osteoporosis or have it. Okay. So if your lab work's great, your tests are great, people, then there's nothing to fix. Okay. And there are some women that fall into that category. There's not a whole lot, but there are women that fall into that category. So if you're not if your A1C is not going up, if your C-reactive, which is inflammatory marker, isn't going up, if you're looking good, you're not losing your bone, your brain chemistry is good, your heart is working well, you're not on high blood pressure medication. If all those things are looking great.
What I do is using our brain and our body to work with us. I never say that I'm not an advocate of using hormone replacement therapy, because I did do it. But what I always say is, in addition to it, it is always a good thing to have your mindset in the right place, to be working in your body in other ways. So walk me through what it looks like when a new client comes to you. Then, like, how do you support them?
So what it looks like is I do a really long intake. I sit with my clients for about an hour and a half. I look at their history. I look at what's going on right now. I look at their medication. I look at their current blood work. I try to get blood work before we even meet. So I feel like there's always more that I want. And so I try to get that so I have a complete picture when they walk in, so we can have a very educated conversation. I ask them, what their thoughts are on HRT, because most of them are perimenopause. Perimenopause is a little bit of a different animal than menopause. But let's say she's menopausal. I'll ask her where she's coming from, with that, what her experience has been. And I usually do recommend that they watch. I have a YouTube video that goes into what do estrogens do? What's the role? What the role of progesterone? And talking about estrogens and cancers, and talking about lifestyle, talking about the Women's Health Initiative. I think having all of that information is super important for a woman to even begin to know what is right for her and what isn't. And I
Which
am
direction?
and I am more than happy to work, if this is what she's choosing, to work on all the lifestyle, helping her, supporting her with some supplementation, if that seems to be making sure that her nutrient levels are where they should be. And I'm happy to work with where she's at and see how far we can get. And then we check in again. Okay. I think my biggest thing is, again, I am watching too many women my age become very small. The world's becoming very small. They're no longer vital. They're in pain. They're on a lot of medications. And I want women to live robustly and to the end of time. I mean, we all have our reasons why we do what we do. I mean, I know my impetus for keeping myself healthy and active and eating right, even when I don't want to sometimes. I mean, there are times when I don't want to, right? And, you can go off of it a little bit, and then you got to go, oops, that's right. This is why I do it.
Because I feel like crap right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the first reminders, is I feel like crap right now.
Yeah.
Or my jeans aren't fitting me. And then even beyond that, I don't want to be immobile. I just don't want to be immobile. I mean, that's a big one for me. And I don't want to be a burden to my children. So I am going to fight and scratch and do whatever I can in order to give myself what I feel is the best thing for myself. And again, that's a very individualized thing for each person for many, many different reasons, for many, many, many
Absolutely.
different reasons. I do like using a specific type of maca to help with the adrenals, to help with possibly the body being turned back on, and it can make some of the hormones. The thing is that when we lose our estradiol, we lose the ovarian function, and that's where estradiol is made from. And I do think it's really important for women to understand the 3 different types of estrogens that our bodies make in order, again, to understand what their body's doing so they can make a better decision on what's right for them. All right, I teach them about that.
Because this is, the self-love podcast. Do you meet many women who are struggling at all with how they feel about themselves during this time? Because I think that's one thing that from my own experience came along with the depression, kind of lost myself for a while there. And that's why what I started to do for myself and as far as mindset work, in addition to all these other things, making sure the funny thing is, like we say, it's all connected.
Yeah.
When I started to lift my weights, it gave me more clarity in brain and the things started to click in.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not having as many sugar cravings right now. And that makes it easier for me to be able to choose better foods. The whole circle, the whole circle of life, which includes what I found anyway, with how I felt about myself fundamentally. Because like you say, if we're lacking in other areas too, other vitamins, I've been there. There were days I really had to push myself to do it. You know what I mean? To get out of the bed
Yeah.
and to do
Yeah.
it. And then as I did it more and more, and then it became easier. But initially, sometimes it really is very difficult for a woman to really even understand that and acknowledge it, that this is why that's happening, and then push beyond it and push through it.
Well, the work that you do is so important because this is definitely a big part of us getting through. And I would say, I don't know if this was true your experience or not, but I felt really strong in my 50s, probably till about 56, but every woman's different. And so we have our different times when we go through this where
Phases, right?
yeah, there are phases. There are definitely phases. And so my women who are like maybe 45 to maybe 60, okay, are going through that phase somewhere in it, okay, where we need to just kind of recalibrate how we look at ourselves, treat ourselves, honor ourselves, just the mindset. There often needs to be some support in shifting that. And you said something I think really important that I'm hoping other women just heard it. And that is if you do just one thing, that ripple effect. So it's not overwhelming because it's just one thing. That ripple
Exactly.
effect is just amazing. So if you could just take one thing and
Start
even
with something small.
yeah, something small is really, sometimes that's all we need to get the ball rolling. And we need other people to remind us, to encourage us because our self-talk is not that great. We'll get discouraged and or something else will come up and derail us. If I often get asked at the end of a podcast, what would you tell women? And that is number 1, be kinder to yourself. Number 2 is pause and stay curious and get your team with you. Okay, staying curious, I think, is really important because things are going to come our way where it's going to, an illness or someone else in the family or something like that. And if we don't stay curious, and I'm speaking for me because we're all different in how we handle things, right? I like to control. You just look at me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like to control. Supported. We think we're not supported. They're not supported.
So that's a double-edged sword.
Our bodies do make 3 different types of estrogen. And when we go into menopause, the predominant type of estrogen that our bodies make is estrone. And estrone is the more inflammatory type of estrogen. And we make it from, our bodies still want that estrogen. And so we'll put down that belly fat, and that belly fat is aromatized into estrone. Our breast tissue, makes estrone from the fat. So, in my opinion, and it causes inflammation, in my opinion. And if we can give it just even a little bit of estradiol, that'll kind of tone that down a little bit more. The estradiol makes us much more metabolically healthy. We, insulin receptive, and so we keep inflammation down that way. The estradiol also reduces inflammation. So there's a lot of benefits. So again, my job, in my opinion, is to educate women as to the functions of progesterone and estrogen, the different types of estrogens, why we are having a hard time being listened to, and why we have a hard time getting what we want. I mean, we do have a voice in this. We should be able to ask for what we want, okay, in a reasonable way, and to have a discussion. And one of the things that I do, I've created a PDF, and it is a lab checklist for women in the pause years, so that she knows what labs that would be beneficial, I think, to all women, and why, and then how to have a discussion with your doctor if you get pushback. So my biggest thing is education, and then teaching my women how to be advocates for themselves. And I do have a client, and, I had to chuckle, and I totally get it. She says, God, in hormones, sometimes the first thing that you do, the first accommodation you try doesn't work for you, or you have to have a little bit of patience. Your doctors do too. And her doctor put her on actually a form of hormones that I'm not keen on, and it's pellets. I'm not keen on them at all. And I let her know that, but I said, just let me know how much. I'll support you, keep me posted. And it didn't work for her. And she got really frustrated. And she got frustrated because the cream that she was using before, her body wasn't really absorbing it. So even though she was frustrated, and, I would be telling her what to ask for her doctor. And she says, why don't they know? Why do I have to know so much about my health in order to get help? And unfortunately, I'm sorry, that is the way it is. We need to be in the driver's seat, and we do need to have people on our team.
Yep.
Okay, to help us be there. So you have people like Lisa that can help with the mindset, okay, that can help you there, which is so important. You have either a person like me or somebody else who understands women's health and can guide you there. You can't do it alone. You can't. And then it's really helpful to have, like, I have a course, I have an 8-week course, and it's online, and it's a community. All right. I think community is really important to have support and sharing amongst each other.
I totally agree.
Yeah, we don't get enough of that. So as we're learning about things, and as we're incorporating 1 or 2 things at a time, right, we get to support each other and share with each other what our experiences are. So we need to have a team, and we need to have a place to be supported.
I think so too. And the key thing that you mentioned that resonates with me is advocating for yourself. Learned it the hard way. So self-advocacy, I think, is number one when you're going through this. Educating yourself is up there. Actually, maybe educating yourself is number one, and then self-advocacy is number 2.
Order. Yeah.
Yeah. Because my doctor never even mentioned anything about it. I just finally went to her after I had, stopped. I knew I was in full menopause and had, and finally went to her. I found most of my symptoms were actually post-menopausal, like after,
Everyone's
It wasn't-
different.
Yeah. It wasn't during the actual menopausal year. That's my libido increased and so
Isn't that
forth
funny?
during that year. It was afterwards that, all the hot flashes and all the other stuff came. And I'm like you. Well, I started Perry when I was like 38, and I know that now, but I didn't know that at the time. But then when I thought back to how I was gaining weight, not able to lose it, was starting to feel the emotions a bit more. I know I was in, and it was triggered by a life event. And that's important, I think, to to note as well that sometimes even early onset perimenopause, as maybe even with your own experience, can be triggered by trauma or whatever, or, life events. So that's something for everyone to keep in mind.
Yes.
So this has been a very educational conversation. So I thank you so much for joining me. I feel like I've learned a little bit today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank everybody for tuning in today for this episode of the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love Podcast. And I always sign off my episodes with, please remember to choose self-love first. Bye for now.